despite my massive stature, I did not play professional football. The closest I came to playing any kind of football was a 110-pound team in 7th grade. We were undefeated. That was my only time playing football. I consult businesses on corporate social responsibility, so I help build purposeful brands, working on community engagement, employee engagement, issues around strategic philanthropy and sustainability. I do it both with my company, Needle Consultants. I also do it with some fierce women in Kind, Colorado, where we represent some of the more conscious cannabis companies in the space. So it is my distinct pleasure to get to work with these fine gentlemen and talk about the impact of, we're going to talk about CBD, and we're going to talk about cannabis, and we're going to talk about the NFL and the horrible practices, frankly, that the league has, the punitive practices that the league has with regard to those substances. So enough of me talking. I'd love it if these guys would each introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their football careers and in particular their use of cannabis or CBD before, during, and after their careers and how that's helped them.
I'll go first. My name is Charlie Adams. I played, I said 3 years, but I went to 5 training camps, so I count that as 5 years. I don't care what that number says. But I didn't have a huge relationship with cannabis my whole, my career most of the time. A little recreationally here and there, but I was pretty straight-laced as my early 20s and stuff. And I met, some guys that opened me up to it later on in my career. And then it was still more recreational, but now as I got a little older, it's less recreational, but I do it helps my body feel better. I have a lot of just inherent swelling and aches and pains that CBD and THC help me take care of it. So that's kind of my relationship now, and I probably could get away with using a little more, I think. It's the CBD, and both sides of it, but I like it, it's helped me a lot. So that's basically how I started and where I'm at now.
Yes, well, with me, in high school, I did nothing. I didn't drink, I did nothing. I was just purely athlete. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. When I left home and I went to Indian Hills Community College in Centerville, Iowa. Centerville, Iowa, anybody from there? I started smoking. No, it was my way of coping. When I got there, I didn't smoke, I didn't do anything. I didn't socialize with the guys because a lot of the guys came from the inner cities, right? And so a lot of those guys were smoking. They were smoking marijuana. They were doing their Acapulco Gold and Panama Red and all of those different strains in that hotel. And I just didn't get involved. And then it got pretty lonely there, sitting in my dorm by myself. And then I started smoking, marijuana with the guys. The thing about it, what it did for me, is that it settled me down. I'm hyper. I'm ADHD type of a guy. My mind is always running. And then I was a running back, wide receiver, punt returner, kick returner. So that meant the ball was in my hands at all times. And I was taking a lot of punishment, getting beat up, bruises, fingers, ankles, anything you could think of. And it helped me get through it because the pills that the doctors were giving me back in junior college, they were making me sick. I didn't know why. I said, man, I can't take this stuff. Tylenol 3s with codeine, all of those different type of painkillers that they were giving the guys. And when I would watch the guys, I would watch them guys, and they were out there. I took it a couple of times. I went out to practice. I couldn't practice. Everything was foggy. Everything, I couldn't focus. And so I started smoking marijuana in junior college, through college, and into the pros in that hotel. Now remember, in 1981 is when they started testing in the National Football League. And that's when a lot of us ball players got caught up because remember, we had been doing this ever since, before they started doing the testing. And so a lot of us players, we got caught up into it. So I kept telling our trainers and our doctors that I wasn't going to take any of the opiates because once again, they made me sick. I did my marijuana. After a game, I did my marijuana. I could sleep, I could eat, I was focused, I got my rest. So that let me know that marijuana in its natural state, with nothing tainting it from the ground, is good for me. It might not be good for everybody else, but it was good for me. So that was my experience with marijuana, and it helping me. And now today, boy, it helps me tremendously because I'm fighting CML, chronic myelogenous leukemia. So it's helping me control my leukemia. I take chemotherapy every day, 3 pills a day. It helps to neutralize that. It helps me with my neuropathy. So gang, I'm telling you right now, CBD helps. Marijuana helps. It's not the devil. As a matter of fact, it's an angel for me. So, I'm just letting you know, it works. My wife just had 2 knee operations. She wouldn't take CBD. I finally got her on the CBD and doing the edibles. My wife is a different person. And I thank God. So yeah, so I'm thankful for CBD. I'm thankful for marijuana. You can do what you want to do, but I'm gonna get mine.
So Rick, thank you for that inspirational speech. One of the greatest of all times, and look how he looks. He looks great. He's moving around. We all aspire to, every one of us sitting here, to, when we progress in age, to be as live and springy as Rick here. And we're on the right track as he was back before there were festivals for hemp and festivals to promote cannabis in general. And a state like Colorado that's pushing the envelope on opening up people's minds to considering different options. It's pretty awesome. So great words there. I'm Jake Plummer. I live here in Boulder, Colorado now for the last 6 years. Thank you for that one whistle. The rest of you must have booed me, huh? Did you boo me at one time? If you booed me, don't worry. We can make friends later on some of this hemp beer here. It's pretty tasty. But I grew up in Idaho, and of all places, Idaho, you would think that cannabis would have been like the devil and stay away. But I was raised by a pretty cool family, pretty hip, some relatives from San Francisco that came and visit, and they drove there. So there was always something happening in my family. So marijuana was not what it was cut out to be when they talked about it in school in the 80s to me growing up. I didn't believe in the whole spiel Nancy Reagan was spewing back then. So, because I saw family members and friends that were near and dear to my heart and our family that were brilliant and intelligent and smart and could think and talk and play ultimate frisbee and have fun and hacky sack and just enjoy life. So I never understood why people believed in such propaganda if they hadn't witnessed it firsthand. So I witnessed it growing up. Through my playing days, I was extremely focused like Charlie. The fear of getting caught kept me away from it because that's letting your teammates down if you get caught. I would be letting, not myself, I mean, hey, I could deal with that, but I'd be letting down my teammates and my team and that organization or my school if I had gone that route and tried this stuff. There were times recreationally that, you know, Rusted Root concert, you know, that, I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to say, okay, sure, I'll try that chocolate. But it wasn't a habit that happened all the time until about 3 years ago when I had some hip surgeries to repair some torn labrums, some missing cartilage, some bony protuberances. I liked when they told me that. Bony protuberances on my hip. So I had a lot of work done in my hips, and any of you out there with hip pain or back pain know how extremely debilitating that can be. And so that's when I got my red card from Dr. Joseph Cohen, who might be around here today. He looked at me and I told him who I was and what I did, and he signed it and said, "You have arthritis, here's your card." That was it. I walked out the door and went to a dispensary. And then I ran into Ryan Kingsbury through Charlie and Nate Jackson and our buddies we played with and started taking CBD oil. And that's when it really happened, like, wow, pain went away. I can get down and play with Legos on the floor with my kids, and if my wife says, "Hey, can you give me some water?" I'm like, boom, I jump up, run over, get water, run back. And I'm 43, I played 10 years of NFL football, 4 straight years of college football, and 2 straight years of high school football. So I got my ass beat up a lot because I'm 185 pounds now. And that's what I was until I got here to Denver and got up to 210 pounds. So I know the beating and it hurts. I know that the players that are going through it now should be able to choose. That's why I'm here. Hemp, THC, cannabis in general is about well-being and health, and you shouldn't have to look over your shoulder to be healthy and happy and get off your ass and go on a walk and change your life.
How y'all doing? I'm Reuben Droughns. I'm a 50% pothead and 50% football player. I've been smoking for quite a while, you guys. I've actually been recreational smoking since I was 15. So even though I really didn't know I was actually putting it in my body at the time, and obviously, you don't really know I didn't really know until the research and all the stuff that's out now is coming out and understanding more of what I've been putting in my body throughout this time. Right. But no, I started smoking weed when I was, like I said, 15, and I've been doing it ever since, since then. When I was playing ball, I smoked. When I was in college, I smoked. When I was in professional football, I smoked weed. And now I'm taking a lot more CBDs instead of that. CBD's been helping me because I have chronic pain everywhere, just like Jake, just like most of these guys up here on the stage. I suffer from, arthritis in my hips, my knees, my toes, my neck, my arms, my fingers, everything. And it's been helping me get through the day, just about every day. And from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep, which is tough sometimes to go to sleep. But it's helped me out tremendously.
So Justin, Sandy, I feel like I know these guys for a lifetime, even though we've spent maybe minutes or hours together at this point. But no, we've been through a lot of the same experiences as far as going through, I guess, physical challenges that kind of wreck into a car crash over and over and over again. So I think, yeah, we can definitely relate on that level and trying to find solutions for pain and just kind of the residual experience of the NFL. I played a total of 5 years, 4 credited seasons, and I also feel very, very fortunate to have 4 credited seasons. I was on the training table a lot, but my introduction to cannabis was recreationally in high school, just a few times, and yeah, I stayed away from it for the most part just because it was a threat to my football career, which was #1 priority in my life up till about 28 years old when I chose to retire from the NFL. But when I moved to Boulder, Colorado, right around 8 years ago, I was introduced to organic agriculture and cannabis education overall, and I just opened my eyes to kind of the cultural acceptance, just Colorado in general. I give a lot of credit to all the powers that be that are, making Colorado a safety zone and a accelerator and an incubator for a lot of these cannabis conversations and companies and whatnot. So thank you to everybody involved in that, which I think is all of us at some level. And from that point, my interest in kind of regenerative agriculture took me around the world, and I came back when industrial hemp became more of a commonplace, term in my mind, even though I know people have been fighting this since, prohibition has occurred. So I don't see myself as a pioneer. I see myself as somebody who's kind of, taking the baton, like we were talking about backstage, but taking the baton and kind of continuing on with it and trying to figure out what is a model of, incorporating industrial hemp into a small farm practice. Is that viable? Is that even something that people want to do? And what exactly does that look like? So that's been extremely challenging and educational, throughout that whole time. But like these guys, I guess my passion for it comes from one, just common sense that it's one of the most useful plants for human beings and just health, I think, on the planet Earth. So I think that's just basic common sense. And orally, when I've taken the plant, I think that inflammation for me is subsided 100%. I know 100% is aggressive, but subsides quite a bit. But I would say that I think prior to prohibition coming into place, this was a common treatment for a number of different things. So I think we're just kind of coming back around to that acceptance. So I think it comes from my personal experience, and my agricultural passion is kind of where I've landed in cannabis, and industrial hemp, farming industrial hemp is kind of where I like to position myself. Even though I think we can all recognize that this plant has a lot of different benefits and aspects to it. Marijuana, industrial hemp. I mean, I think there's so much crossover there that we're all kind of supporting each other, even though the legalities right now, kind of put us in different camps, which I think we can all learn to play by the rules, and I think we're all headed in the right direction. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, from the natural substance prescribed in the NFL, I think I read a National Institutes of Health white paper that's on the Athletes for Care website, if you want to read about it. And what it says in that paper is that NFL athletes have a much significantly higher rate of opiate usage, both while they're in the league and, more importantly, or just as importantly, after they leave the league. Much higher than the general population. Can some of you or one of you talk a little bit about the team doctor's role with regard to prescribing opiates, and whether they're open to any kind of natural alternative remedies when you were playing?
Well, I come from 75 to 83, so I'm older than all these guys. And so as far as the medical side is concerned, everything has changed from 1975 up to today. That's for sure. The procedures that they would do for, let's say, a meniscus on the knee. Today, what do? They go in, they put 2 holes in, go in, clean that thing out, and you're back out on the field within maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Whereas back when I was playing for a meniscus, they would cut from here all the way up to here, open that thing up, then sew you back up. You're out for the season. So when you're talking about medication back in the 70s and 80s, you're talking about Percocets, Darvocets, codeine. All of those things were there to take care of our pain, folks. Remember, the rules were totally different then. The rules today are different. Now it's about protectionism. Back then, it was about making money. It was about TV ratings. And just like in Rome, if you didn't take the heads off, the fans didn't like it. And so back in my day, it was about taking your head off going over the middle. It was about spearing. It was about as much violence as you could put on somebody that you possibly could, because the fans demanded it. When you get fans demanding it, that means you get TV ratings. And so where does the NFL get their money? From TV. $19 billion. So the violence on us was it was crazy, folks. It was nuts. I mean, they could lay that. Jack Tatum would beat the hell out of you. Yes. Ronnie Lott, man, he'd say, oh, you come over the middle, I'm going to take your head off. There weren't hardly any flags. On the sideline, if you stepped on the sideline and got hit, so what? Concussion? How many fingers do I have? Oh, there's 3. Well, get back out there. There's only 2. Get back out. As a matter of fact, my first game in the league, folks, I had a concussion. My helmet got cracked the first time I touched the ball. So that's how violent the game was back then. Today, now they recognize the CTE. They recognize all of those things. So they're starting to understand also that the opiates were killing us. It was hurting us. It was doing damage. I told you I didn't take them. And I won't take them. I couldn't take them. And I'm thankful that I couldn't. My body was rejecting it. So what I'm saying is today, the younger ball players, man, they got the education, they got the science, they got all of that. There's no excuse. And I hope the league sits back and understands that, hey, this is the best thing for the ball players. It's the best thing for their family, because the families are the ones that suffer when we're all suffering with opiate type of problems and also with CTE and our bodies, man, just going through hell. So yeah, I think that the doctors today should really, really look at what we're doing as far as hemp is concerned, CBD is concerned, and marijuana is concerned. And I bet you the young ball players today would do it over opiates.
So for me on opioids, I had somewhat of an addiction to opioids. I'd pop some Percocet and drink some beer and take some shots and get all drunk before I even step out the door. There was times where I was in so much pain, especially with my neck pain and everything. I would take a lot of Darvocets and Loracets and things of that nature. I remember there was one time that I took a Darvocet before a game, and I probably smoked a joint, too. But I took a Darvocet, smoked a joint. Went into the office and actually got a shot. A cortisone shot a Toradol shot in the neck on the Darvocet, and smoking marijuana too. But so I played that game. It was before a Raiders game. It's when I was with the Cleveland Browns. Very first play I ran down the middle. We had a draw play, and I ran down the middle, and I was juking a couple players and stuff like that, and I took a knee, and I set the ball down, and I had no idea that the play was still live. The guy picked the ball up, scooped it up, ran it into the end zone. And then, so after that, I was like, man, I need to, stop taking all these opioids and stop drinking, obviously drinking on the opioids and things of that nature, and just continue to smoke marijuana. I mean, it was, for me, I felt like it was helping my pain better than just any stuff. And then I was actually coherent in doing what I was, able to see what I was doing and, going out there and still being able to play. So that is my story.
As I mentioned earlier, it wasn't very big, so took a lot of shots. I know that every one of these guys sitting here took a lot of shots. They're still getting hit a lot in the game today, even though they say it's safer and it's a little less violent. They're still hitting. Their heads are still colliding. So back to what I said is the ability to research hemp and to give them the data they need to make that decision, or give the powers that be to influence the NFL to make that decision, is where this needs to go. And I think that right now, as Rick mentioned earlier, it's the current players. The players that are playing now have a much more in-depth feelings about their body. They're more in tune with how they feel. They don't go out at night. They have sleep monitors. They wear those orange glasses for blue light. I mean, they're doing everything to prolong their careers, where we were getting opioids given to us, and I took anti-inflammatories my whole career. And one week, we had a bye week, I got off the anti-inflammatories, and I could not take a drop. My groin hurt so bad. I didn't know when I was on the anti-inflammatories, I was flying out of there, looking good, dropping back, getting my depth. Off of the anti-inflammatories, I couldn't even drop back, and that's when it clicked. And that was year 9 when we went to the AFC Championship game, that I'm going to be done here real soon with playing this game, because my mom taught me be very aware of what you put in your body, son. Be very aware of what you ingest, because it all, especially if it's something bad, side effects can be lethal. And that's where it's a beautiful thing to me, is that there is no proven side effects of cannabis in general. And like you mentioned, Justin, that this plant's been, since we came out of the caves and started roaming the earth, this has been a huge part of our lives just since Prohibition. So all of you here, congratulations for being here. You guys up here sharing your stories, myself included. You have to keep driving this thing. And opioids are very bad.
Very bad.
Just to add to what you guys said, I was never an opiate person. I never really took pain pills unless I had surgery. And I had a lot of surgeries, seven or so surgeries, and I would take them when I was in severe pain, but never really got on the opioid train. But the people ask me why I do this is because there's these younger kids grew up in this generation of the opioids, the guys that are there now, they see it. They don't want to be there. You know what I mean? They see how much damage it's doing. They don't want to go down that path. And I'm just here to try to open eyes to people that make decisions in the NFL or whatever league we're talking to. You know, everybody up here gets a message, everybody here gets a message, but the kids need to have an option, and I say kids, they're just a little bit younger than me. You know, they need to have the option. You know, I could go into the training room and get any pill I wanted, anytime. You know, they would never say no to any kind of pill. Anti-inflammatories were every single day, and I really didn't know they were bad for me. I really didn't know that back then, and it's disappointing because I probably wouldn't have taken those. But you know, people need to know the options that are out there, especially healthier options, and I just can't understand why people stand in the way of a healthier option when these are doing so much damage. So that's my spiel on the opioids.
These types of issues coming up with the collective bargaining agreement on the table in 3 years, I think it is. And you know, last time this happened, about 7 years ago, there were some quality of life issues that the players were able to accomplish in terms of reducing pad practices, 2-a-day practices. Those have all been eliminated, which obviously preserves the body a little longer. You're not getting hit as hard or as much in theory, and then you can play longer, so it's obviously in their best interest as well. What are the chances of the current players, now that cannabis is legal in so many places, what are the chances that the current players will push cannabis as an issue in the CBA coming?
2020 is the new CBA, correct? If Brady and Breeze are still playing, nothing will happen. Let me put it that way. That may not register until you just kind of think about that a little bit. Brady and Breeze right now, Manning's gone. If they're still here in 2020, it could be a hard push to change anything, really. But the younger generation that needs to know what we're dealing with, they need to meet Reuben, Droughns, they need to meet Rick Upchurch, Charlie Adams, Justin. They need to meet all of us and see like, hey, what do we deal with every day? What do we go through? And understand that if there's a healthier option now, that they are the ones that can institute change, because the NFL isn't going to do it. You guys have seen Goodell and listened to him and know what he does. The owners out there's too much money on the bottom line. The players have to go and say, this is what we would like. We would like to not be criminalized. We would like to not be ostracized by our teammates. We would like to not have to choose an unhealthy option that we know causes all of these awful side effects. We would like to have the freedom to go, if we want to get acupuncture, get acupuncture. Or if we want to have cannabis, take cannabis. Whatever your ritual is, whatever you're doing, it's for entertainment purposes. And if you don't drug test Madonna, then stop drug testing the NFL, because I watch to be entertained. I don't know about anybody out there, maybe you don't watch at all. Good for you. But if you do, you want to be entertained. And if it helps entertainment value and the players to be on the field, to be lucid, to be there, to be present, to be feeling good. The NFL, you don't feel good after camp. It's just a body maintenance after camp. And so if you can find a way to make yourself get through that, then the players are the ones that are going to have to drive this. And that's really all I have to say. No one else can drive it.
So I think it takes more. I think it takes guys like us to get the word out. I mean, I think it's the retired players that these players are going to end up being. You know, they're going to look at us and say, hey, well, I don't want to end up like that. I want to be able to do what I want and put in my body what I want to put in my body, and not accept the things that you're going to be able to, that you're going to put out there for me. So I think it takes more retired players and more guys and ex-pro athletes to get out there and do what we're doing. Get up here on stage and open up your mouth and being able to speak and being positive about what you can do and put in the words that you can put out in that community about marijuana, about CBDs, about what it does for you, and about how it helps you out in the long run. So the more they hear us, I think it's going to take an effect to them that, hey, we need to make a change in 2020.
There's too much at stake for the younger guys to put their neck on the line for that. I know it's, you know, someone wants to be the trailblazer, but the NFL has shown time after time that they try to squash people's voices with, you know, they can fire your ass for no reason and pay you no money, and that's unique to the NFL. So it's hard for those guys to really stand up and make a stand. So it does have to be from people that are older, retired, or super rich or in the NFL now and don't care. So one of those guys, but it's just going to be hard for the guys that are currently playing to stand up and make that stand.
Yeah. Well, I just believe that the younger ball players are going to be the ones to drive this, man. I think because, once again, they see what's happened to us. They see what's happened to us as ball players. We can go and sit down and tell them all the operations that we have, that you're going to have. I look more at the family. If you care about your family down the road when you have CTE, yeah, you're young now, and all of those things, right? You're making all this money in that whole deal, but believe me, when you hit 66 years old, hit 67 years old, you're going to say to yourself, why didn't I stand up for something that's going to help me down the road? But not only that, I want to be selfish enough to make sure that my wife and my children and my families are taken care of. So these young ball players better realize and understand that the same situations that we're in, you only got one body. That's it. And when that body is ruined and tore up and beat up, you better have a remedy for it. But not only that, if you come up with CTE, the psychological problems in that whole deal, you know who's going to have to deal with that father? The children. You know who's going to have to deal with that husband? The wife. So look at down the road and how it's going to affect you overall, not just in the moment.
Some wise words.